What's up, guys? Thanks for watching. We're here in the studio, and if you don't mind sharing out the link, please do share it out again. We're gonna be live till how much time we got? An hour, 15 minutes or so.
Until 6.
So if you want to tune in, you want to share this, please share it out. Phone call 713-526-8737. We would love to have one of you internet people light up this board.
Yeah, showing them
See if I
stuff.
can see the board. Make sure you guys can see this.
Oh, we can actually move that camera
This
around
board,
and show
yeah.
them different things.
But this is the board. So if you call, these little things light up, and we can like, yay, we have a phone call, and then we can answer the phone and hopefully not hang up on you guys. But yeah, feel free to call in, and we're gonna be getting into some propaganda news. Mike is gonna talk about more cops being crazy. I got one on Boy Scouts and some crazy, unfortunate stuff. But we're going to cover that, and of course we'll be going over your comments on the YouTube, and again, taking your phone calls. So please stay tuned. This is So Soon the Truth. We're going to turn it up a little bit, and you'll get to hear us. Hear them. Yeah, man.
How about you? Because then you're more likely to find out. Oh, I am so I got that done now.
But I just don't trust it. I just see there's some.
Yeah.
Alright, we're back.
Yeah, that's a lot of songs. All right, we are back. We're glad to be here. Hey, listen to that. What do you know? Because it's so soon the truth. It's so soon. Yes. We love it.
We are back. Welcome back to Freethinker Radio 90.1 KPFT Houston. My name is Derek Bros. I'm here with Micah Jackson. We are also, as always, live on KPFT on the HD2 dial, which you can find at kpft.org/listen. And of course, we're here on Fridays from 3 to 4 p.m. And for those who want to be fancy and watch us live in the studio, if you're into that whole thing, well, you can tune in at youtube.com/conscious resistance, or just search the conscious resistance, either or, with the or without. You will find it. And plug in. We're going to be reading comments from YouTube. We're going to be taking phone calls again, 713-526-8737. And we're going to be going over information you won't find elsewhere. And in fact, if you live in Houston, you might see a poster soon that around town. Micah made some new posters this weekend. Micah promoting. We're really trying to take Freethinker Radio, just I guess as a pause before we continue on to the important news stories. We're really trying to take Freethinker Radio more seriously. Not that we haven't taken it serious before, but just realize that we have an awesome opportunity to be here on KPFT sharing this information. Now, we do this already via YouTube and online, and we've done podcasting and such over the years, but having access to the studio to make use of the equipment, and then also having access to the FM airwaves is a huge thing in the fourth largest city in the country. And to be able to reach all the people, we just had a call, like, I guess, remember it was just past Friday's show, Michael, we had somebody call right at the end, and it was a lady say, I've been listening to KPFT for, some number of years, and you guys' show is amazing, or I love your show, something along those lines. And it was just very supportive. And, she also, we let everybody have their say, their different opinion, and we don't necessarily have to agree or yell at them. And I think people enjoy that.
We don't have to, but we yell at them.
We do yell occasionally. But I think people enjoy that because of how divided, or at least the perception of division in the United States at the moment.
Well, we've had a number.
People appreciate somebody that actually lets there be a dialogue.
We've had a number of calls, Derek. You might remember some of these where people were passing through, or they just happened to listen in. Like they, at first I thought we'd be getting a lot of calls from friends and such, but we're getting calls from a bunch of people out there. And if you remember days, and we still do this, but going and giving flyers out, you reach a lot of people, and you have that immediate engagement with the people. You can, you know, all those interpersonal body language things and having to be on the spot with and all that. That's happening. But honestly, I think in some ways we're reaching way more people via these shows at this point. And it's only because of the audience, because you people out there care about these issues. You comment, you share, you post, even if it's not our show, when you post about these things and you care about them, it's like giving ground for people to have the discussion. And I think that sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk to people about things that aren't, you know, familiar. So I think
Aren't sports or something.
yeah, aren't sports or something, but it's important. And I want to bring up a word, and I want to talk about some of these words. We talk about a word like free a lot, but let's start talking about a word like brave, okay? Because if you really think the world is in a rough spot, I don't think yelling at people is the answer for that, but maybe some conversations with people that don't see some of the things that you've seen. You know, it's like your parents teaching you when you were a kid how to use the toilet. There was nothing wrong with not knowing, you just didn't know yet. And that's the same way we need to approach people out there, meet them where they are, have conversations with them, question their fundamental presuppositions, but do it in a kind way. Maybe not even kind, but we don't have to do it in a you're worthless way. I hear some of these talk radio shows, and I was listening to one coming in today, and it's just like back and forth with people that like, well, that conservative caller just said this, and I think that, for all their information about knowing so much about history, they're really, and it's like, well, why can't you just say your point? You got to put in an attack also, and that's kind of what we're trying to get away from.
I typically immediately tune out anybody when I hear them. Like as far as okay, I'm scanning through the podcast or the radio or whatever, our YouTube channel, and somebody just goes straight to, oh, it's all of the insert whoever's fault, like the Democrats' fault. It's all of the Republicans' fault.
People with
It's all
one
of
tail.
yeah, whatever it may be, because I immediately know like okay, they for one, as far as I'm concerned, they don't see the full picture, but also like you said, they're just pointing their finger at what they see as the enemy. And while it is important to research and to understand and to, who is they, we've asked some of the callers that things, understand the world around you. If you just get to the point where you think some other person who's more of a low level worker like yourself, like most of us, we're just worker bees, right? We're trying to get through. Besides being propagandized, we're not the problem. The problem is elsewhere. But the people in control who wish to be in control, they definitely benefit from keeping us all fighting. I'd say so, wouldn't you, Micah?
I think they benefit from keeping us all fighting and also keeping us distracted. And sometimes I think by manipulating values.
Yeah, manipulating value. So the show that we're calling today for this podcast, this episode is propaganda is all around us. And Micah was just covering, we talked about the Tuttle raid. There's a lot of propaganda that came out during that time. And if we hadn't questioned and pushed past that, we would have maybe be the people who said, hey, if you're out there on social media talking about this, we got your number, right? So
And you don't want to be that person.
they spread propaganda about the Tuttles, call them, dangerous people, drug dealers, what have you. There's just so much propaganda. I know we got some more stories to cover. In probably the second hour, I'm gonna get into some Iran news. I think that's really important. We didn't have much time to dissect that last week, but there's definitely a lot around that, and I think it's important to reflect on what's happening over there in the context of the history of propaganda from the U.S. government. But I know you got something else you wanted to get into, Micah.
Oh, I got a variety of stuff. We can get into propaganda, but I do have a little Texas story here for what it's worth. And turns out that the Texas governor says the state will not accept new refugees. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced just Friday that Texas will not accept any new refugees in fiscal year 2020. Abbott noted in a letter to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo that Texas has accepted more refugees than any other state since fiscal year 2010. On top of grappling with, quote, disproportionate migration issues resulting from a broken federal immigration system. Quote, at this time, the state and nonprofit organizations have a responsibility to dedicate available resources to those that are here, including refugees, migrants, and the homeless. Indeed, all Texans, Abbott wrote. As a result, Texas cannot consent to initial refugee resettlement for fiscal year 2020. Abbott clarified that the policy does not preclude any refugee from later coming to Texas after initially settling in another state. Texas has been has carried more than its share in assisting the refugees resettlement process and appreciates that other states are available to help with these efforts, he wrote. The decision comes after Trump signed an executive order last year requiring refugees first entering the U.S. to resettle only in jurisdictions where local governments have agreed to receive them under a State Department program.
Look, I'm not one for really the state being in control of much, when it comes to just life in general. But the idea that, yeah, the state or the country or the nation or wherever you want to emigrate to is welcoming of you kind of seems common sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that. Like I will say, I'm showing everybody as who's watching on YouTube the article you're looking at, Micah. But we also got some others here, just Texas Monthly, which I'm guessing leans left. I don't know much about them. Greg
I
Abbott's
think they're kind of balanced half the time, but
Well,
yeah.
this if this is opinion piece, I don't know, but it's titled "Greg Abbott's Rejection of Refugees is Baffling and Boneheaded." Let us count the ways the governor got this one horribly wrong. Another one from
See,
CNN.
I'm glad you got this up because what we're talking about is news analysis here.
Yeah,
And you can see where extra things besides just the facts are being said. The first one that I said, it was obvious that it was just taking information from the letter.
yeah, and this one is CNN from CNN's religion editor. Every Catholic bishop in Texas is slamming Governor Abbott's decision to bar refugees. So I will say that CNN, despite trying to portray themselves as centrist, they do tend to be very anti-Trump and more left and things of that sort. I check all sources, especially when we're doing our news, because I think it is important to have that analysis. But I will say that if again, like if I'm just I'm not for the state being in charge of immigration in my ideal world. I have my opinions and things on that, but if we're going to have any sort of immigration system, it seems like even in a decentralized, say, stateless society, my ideal vision or whatever it may be,
I'm coming to live in your yard.
you don't just go to somebody's private community or neighborhood or home
I'm living in your
uninvited.
kitchen.
Like ultimately, if there was no state, then immigration would just mean the people that welcome you to,
Yeah.
you got a job waiting there, or they welcome you onto your property. You'd have kind of your own private property borders, or what I call decentralized borders, if you even want to use that word. But it's just interesting that you have some outlets that are obviously left leaning, or at least the writers are, coming at him this way. And I'm not. This is not a support of Abbott either,
Yeah.
But it's easy to see
I,
basically where they stand.
I
Is
don't
my
think the
point.
article from The Hill that I did read, and I'm not trying to defend The Hill,
No,
just this particular article, I think it sounded fairly balanced as it just drew it, and it said, this is what happened, and then a few things, Texas has done this, and you didn't hear these extra, this is wrong, this is right. I didn't even hear him say, it wasn't one of these articles that goes, let me just think of how something to praise him might be. Texas governor takes a stand, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't, that. It was just matter of factly. And I think this is how we have to look at these news articles, because one of them to me is more suspect. If you've got an axe to grind, it doesn't mean I won't read your article, but I mean, it's like you said about these people that start yelling at people. It's like I already see that you're angling an argument, you know, that may or may not be based on fact. You're not presenting just the facts.
well, I'll share a little bit of this one so we can see maybe what we think about their arguments, because this person is saying let us count the ways.
But I see it as more than just a news article.
Oh
Then,
yeah, this is definitely pushing somebody's like perspective, which I can understand. Them
and that's fine. There's
and
room for
maybe
writing that.
maybe there's truth to what they're saying as well. So let's just kind of. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it just says the main rationale offered by Abbott in his letter is that Texas, quote, has been left by Congress to deal with disproportionate migration issues resulting from a broken immigration system. Yeah, I'd say the immigration system is broken. On Friday, Abbott's press secretary made a statement of sorts by tweeting someone that, quote, Texas is disproportionately affected by the border crisis. This might leave the impression that Abbott is taking a stand against chaos on the border, which would be particularly politically popular. But that is wrong. The refugee settlement program has nothing at all to do with border or illegal immigration. People accepted as refugees by the United States are by definition legal immigrants. They're already gone through an extensive vetting process by federal and international agencies, proving that they face great risk if they were forced to return to their home countries. I think that is an important distinction to make.
But I think most people know that. I knew it when I read it. It was talking about refugees and not immigrants.
Okay, well, I will say that I think in some of the online discourse I'd see that I would guess that some folks who are, and maybe even some folks watching or listening to this who support Trump and his immigration policies might hear this and think that, oh yeah, he's keeping out the. But even though, like you're saying, it's a very specific group of people who've already been vetted and considered that class of refugees, not broadly just migrants or immigrants. Or whatever.
Want to live here without some some violence or whatever it is at home that you're running from.
So that is an interesting point, though, because
refuge.
If his action only affects those who are truly seeking refuge and have already been approved, that is not really related to the broken immigration system that he talked about. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's not the border or the caravans or all that other kind of stuff we've had the last couple
So
years.
then, like I was earlier, the question remains: has Texas taken more refugees
And so
than
that's what
any
we're
other
getting. It
state?
says, quote, so the natural questions might include, is Texas being overrun with refugees? Is this amnesty for illegal immigrants? Does the program exacerbate the problems at the border? Do refugees become a drain on public resources? And so I'm not going to, again, read the whole article, but I will post this on Freethinker Radio and in the chat for those watching on YouTube. And you can read more into this if you're curious, because whether you live in Texas or not, these are the kind of topics they're just not black and white. People want these issues to be black and white. And obviously they're calling him a boneheaded decision, so they're putting their feelings out pretty openly. But I think that they're making some points here that the issue might be a way for Greg Abbott, who I don't really agree with on many things, to play to his base and at least appear to those who aren't going to think too deep and don't know the difference between a refugee. And there are folks who don't know the difference between a refugee
There's
and an
people who
illegal
don't know
immigrant.
the difference between silverware and plasticware.
You're right.
And
So
that's how the Federal Reserve stays in power. Yeah, we got to start talking about knowing the difference, y'all.
knowing the difference between silverware and plasticware is probably a good place to start. But seriously, there are people who just
Yeah.
they have that kind of catch-all, like, oh, they came from a different country, get them out of here, Or even I've been told, and I don't speak Spanish. My family is on both sides has come from other places over the generations, but I've been told once or twice to go home. And I'm like, I've been here my entire life. Like it's at least 2 or 3 generations that have been
I
here.
don't know where home
Like,
is.
but okay, I've probably been here longer than you.
Yeah.
But it's just funny that sort of mentality where folks don't know the difference, and they're already, like you said, it's
It's
just
ignorance isn't a crime.
ignorance is not a crime, but it's definitely messing the world
Sure,
up.
sure setting us all back though.
But
So maybe that's something, that's something we've been talking about. And I think, we talked about it when I was trying to press the word bravery and having the courage to speak to these people. The ignorant, the malinformed, the people that don't think beyond the surface of the propaganda. I'm not saying the propaganda is always wrong, right? I mean, it's just information being propagated.
yeah,
But we
exactly.
gotta,
And somebody mentioned in the earlier chat that they talked about Edward Bernays and the book Propaganda. Maybe we should get
yeah.
into that in just a little bit, because a lot of what we're dealing with, and whether that means news that's trying to steer you one way and then you go to another website and they're trying to steer you the other way, it's important, I think, to take all these different views. But propaganda isn't inherently a tool for evil. It's just like you're saying, like on the poster we showed, the Freethinker Radio posters that we made, and now there's going to go around town. That's our propaganda. And we might have different goals with the propaganda we spread, say, from the U.S. military, U.S. government, but
Some people may argue that
it's
it's
still propaganda.
erroneous, that there's nothing outside the left right, and that there's nothing beyond the lame stream, and that stay in the dead stream. But we tend to think differently. But I do think when it comes down, like obviously when we're doing analysis, we're kind of, it's like editorial, right? Because we're kind of adding some of our opinion. Nobody expects that to be news. But when we sit down and we say, okay, I was just over here at this event, and here's what I saw. Then people look at Freethinker Radio as news, because we kind of do both, and then we play around, so it gets blurred and kind of crazy. But I do think that that's one thing we need to start being able to differentiate, just the facts type news from the extra arguments. And maybe one way to do that is to look at the opposing views, to look at the left and to look at the right, or whatever you want to call them, and just read both. You know?
Mike, I have an interesting topic just to segue
Yeah.
sort of out into this whole discussion. I think it's somewhat related, but I've noticed and this might be an online social media phenomenon. I'm sure some of it exists in some of the real world, but I've noticed, like, okay, we've been working together as activists and doing this show for going on a decade now. And in the very beginning, a lot of the work that we did together was raising awareness about the Federal Reserve and Ron Paul's campaign. And so you come across different people who they consider themselves Tea Party or conservative, right wing, and there was obviously common ground for some issues and things like that. But I feel like for me personally, I've always kind of realized over the years, like, all right, we can go so far with some of these types, whether right or left. But in this particular experience, they were more on the right side of the spectrum. And some of those folks,
But that always changes too, right?
yeah, it evolves. But but this is the
At
part of
that
the
time.
spectrum I want to focus on for a moment. Some of those folks at that time would consider themselves or call themselves patriots, right? And that's a word that I personally have never been, like, it wouldn't be a word I called myself. But I did have an instance where, long story short, I did this interview and somebody asked, they're like, oh, who here considers himself to be a patriot? And I realized the other people saw the term patriot as completely just like right wing and totally against it, which is somewhat what I see. But I also saw as an opportunity to say, hey, I consider myself a patriot, but not because I like the government. To me, that's not what
That's what I
patriotism is,
always
right?
understood. It wasn't about
So
loving the government. It's about the
exactly.
people.
So I mean, even though I'm not too comfortable and wouldn't
It's
necessarily
what
use
does
that term
it
that
mean?
often, like that's where I would come from if I was to say, "Hey, I'm a patriot," not because I care about the government. In fact, it's the opposite. It's like you're willing to
Yes, it
call out
is.
the government because it's not the people confuse, and this is
It's
maybe a different point, but similar. People are confusing the government, like us, right? Oh,
with the
we did
people.
this with the people, exactly. So getting to
So
the
in a way, I just want to say one thing. In a way, patriot does have something to do with your fellow countrymen, but it doesn't necessarily have something to do with your government, except to
exactly.
maybe keep it in line with what your country people want, what your people want.
I mean, government really is just to govern the mind, really, at the end of the day, right? So when we come down to it, though, we had people at that time who would call themselves patriots, and they were, maybe folks who followed like the Oath Keepers and with like Sheriff Mack, and they were into Ron Paul and this kind of thing. And
And
some of
they're a tiny minority of the right, even though they're put over there.
Sure, sure. But now what I'm seeing in the Trump years is there, and especially in light of this QAnon conspiracy theory, and for anybody who listening on YouTube or elsewhere who still believes in
QAnon.
that, it's garbage. You're being led astray. It's disinformation. It is harmful. It may have woken up some people because people tell me, oh, but so many people are now questioning this and that. It's like, yeah, but I think it's leading you down some very, different roads. You might have pieces of the truth, but I don't think you got all of it. Because in this mindset,
Well, remember Alex Jones gave pieces of the truth.
Exactly, and now he's kind of gone even under the Trump years. We see a lot of people who are basically just following the establishment line, right? So again, I had somebody tell me on YouTube the other day, I thought you were a patriot, unsubscribe, because I did a video talking about how horrible these decisions Trump is in relating to Iran. Or anytime I call it Trump, somebody will make that sort of comment like, "Oh, bye, I thought this was a patriot channel." So the patriot term has, especially on YouTube,
And co-opted.
has been co-opted by these people who are definitely more right-leaning, but they're QAnon Trump supporters. And again, I'm sure some of them are going to come across this video, and they see that as being a patriot. Like they use this. You can find like Patriot Soapbox, and if you look up QAnon and Patriot, you'll find a lot of channels who have a similar theme. And so it's just interesting to me that in the past couple of years, that term has got even more convoluted and even more taken away from what it ever was supposed to mean. So I just wanted to share that, and I don't know what your thoughts are on that whole thing and what anybody online or listening to the show wants to say about that.
First they steal the word, and then they steal the meaning. George Orwell.
Yep, and I think that's a big part of the propaganda process. George Orwell, we talk about Edward Bernays and the use of propaganda, whether government propaganda, military. But yeah, part of it is just changing the meanings of everything. And in 1984, freedom wasn't even freedom meant slavery, right? It didn't have the same definition, it didn't have the same meaning, so it didn't have the same value, so it didn't affect the world in the same way.
Yeah, like when you're at the fast food restaurant, they say, "Hey, can I get some silverware?" No, you can have some drippy old dinosaur plastic.
Oh, and they think it's silverware, and it's funny. So,
I mean, the word just means plasticware to them.
yeah,
They really
exactly. They
like,
don't. There's no like translation. That's just what it's become.
yeah,
But just side note, somebody said this radio show is silverware, not plasticware. So we're doing something all
that
right.
sounds good. Um,
But somebody online also said, I agree. QAnon looks like a psyop and Mossad operation.
maybe we should talk about it for a moment.
They've been pushing for war with Iran months ago. Well, I mean, it's basically just this move that no matter what Trump does, QAnon will, or whoever is playing QAnon, and I've
Because
done
I
some
haven't fallen
videos.
into it too much. I've seen it in passing, but I just haven't dug into it.
Well, it's just a bunch of. I mean, it's not really worth your time. But I will say, anybody who wants to learn about this on the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel, I've done a few videos over the years that. Well, it's been 2 years now that's been popular. But I did one looking into it, and
Now I have to
it's
look.
been long
You just told me
exposed.
not to look.
The thing, it's been long exposed. Like, and I found articles as well where people involved in Trump's transition team were saying that they were involved in creating it to quote excite the base.
Here's a Wikipedia.
Yeah, if you go to Q Post or Q.pub, like that's where these people keep up with it.
Far right conspiracy
And
theories.
they basically believe, and that's the other thing, the awakening. They think they're the true awakening.
Could they be being set
they're
up
the.
to be like, look, here's all these lunatics. If you believe in a deep state, then you must be QAnon.
I do think it's a way to attack people who kind of, because the thing is, they have part of the truth. They do got a little bit, right?
Remember back
But
a
these
decade
people,
ago when they had that big thing out about how to deal with conspiracy theorists and stuff?
well, we definitely have seen. I mean, we've been covering that for years. They've been focusing more and more on that. So the QAnon, for those who are unfamiliar, it's basically just this, and
4chan.
it's a conspiracy theory which does contain nearly every other conspiracy. And I do think that there is a global conspiracy that contains a lot of other conspiracies. But in this version of events, Trump is the good guy fighting the deep state. Everything that Trump does is 4D chess that you just, unless you are part of the awakening and the movement, the Great Awakening, then you don't really know what's going on. So, for example, when Trump was bombing, let's say after Assad and the gas attack, and now we know that was a false flag and Trump launched 40 Tomahawk missiles over there. Oh no, that was to take out deep state operations. Oh, this launching of missiles to Soleimani and Iran. No, that was because they were fighting deep state people out there. So anytime Trump is attacked by the media, whether it's for good things that we would be like, yeah, that's bad, or things are like, okay, they're focusing on some silly stuff. The QAnoners take that as believing, see, this is evidence. They're against him. They don't think very deeply. I'm just no offense to anybody, but I've noticed that it's not a high level of thinking and researching and checking facts going on when it comes to this whole QAnon thing. And I get these people who come to my channel. I probably lost a couple thousand subscribers because a bunch of them joined when I started doing Epstein
It
research.
ties itself to traditional Christian tropes.
Well, there's definitely some folks who are like, just don't worry, trust. Oh, that's the other thing. Trust in the plan is a big QAnon thing. So it's this whole trust, just trust in the plan. And he gives them these dates, or he, she, the team, they give dates, and nothing ever happens. I've been able to prove several times. Look, but they do it in this
Oh,
sort of
wait a
innocuous
minute.
way.
People don't know their family. They don't talk to them. They can't work with their neighbor, but they're just going to trust.
You trust the plan. That's the whole thing, is trust the plan. And the people running it, like I said, I went back and I did the research. It was some different channels on YouTube, but there was also people involved in the Trump team, and they said they did it again to quote excite the base. But then it's grown and grown, and I don't know who's still holding it up. But I will tell you this: a lot of people got huge YouTube followings by talking about QAnon and following this. And these people have done, I would say, probably this movement, whoever's running it, whether it's just people taking advantage and kind of seeing an opportunity, like, oh, I'm going to get into that field. Like, people noticed, hey, when you talk about Trump, if you support him, you get a lot of supporters. And if I was to do that, we would probably, the channel would grow up even bigger. Like if we became pro-Trump here. But the thing is, these folks will just make excuses for everything. Keep trusting the plan, keep trusting the plan. And it feeds them little things like hashtag D23. Nobody really knows what that means, but they're like, oh, December 23rd. And it's like a puzzle, and they want to feel like they're a part of it. And I somewhat can connect with that as somebody who does believe in
Oh,
conspiracies,
it's
the
kind of like
conspiracy
a cult
facts.
where people are led deeper and deeper into the group's
Exactly.
secrets.
And so I have folks who will come on, my different social media and say like, Derek, you're just not getting it, man. If you would just trust
Make
these
people feel
channels.
special like any
And
cult.
so I did, and Micah, I think you probably know at least one of these names. I did a video a while back called "The Problem with QAnon, David Wilcock, and Benjamin Fulford." And I
David
think,
Wilcock.
yeah, these names have been 10, 15 years old. You go back to David Wilcock and Benjamin
Yeah.
Fulford in 1999 on their
Mm.
blogs, they were claiming there was going to be mass arrests. That's another part of the QAnon thing, is they've been saying there's these sealed indictments that are going on. And so,
Remember when they said they served him up to the old President Bush and all this stuff, and that's why he had to disappear?
well,
And they
yeah,
said like, look,
McCain
they're
didn't
being
die.
served.
He was
Yeah.
assassinated. Bush didn't die. He was assassinated. Ginsburg, the reason she hasn't been seen much is because they took her out, and now there's a double. I mean, it just gets into this where they have to contort so much of reality in order to believe that Trump is still a good guy. Like, that's what it comes down to. And it's just
Well,
insane, man.
well, I think of something I learned in one of my epistemology classes now. Like you can hold any theory, as long as you keep it squaring with reality. The problem is you've got to keep adapting it to square it with reality. So this thing you're talking about, how they have to keep making this and then that and then this and then that. It's like to just hang on to it. They're trying to make the narrative fit the appearances.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying, is they can put out vague sort of like statements, like, oh, declassed. Like they use, if you go look at the post, it's just so silly. It looks like so minor, but they really believe that there are what they call Q proofs, that there have been times where Trump has made it clear that he's involved. And to be clear, Trump could potentially be involved in this, but that doesn't mean any of it's
He could be
real.
cute.
He could be part of, like, playing it along to lead the base along, because there's been a few times like, oh, somebody went to a Trump march and they had a QAnon sign and Trump pointed at it, and so they're, oh my God, he noticed us, he identified it, and so there's all these little things that these followers have believed that this is what they call breadcrumbs, right?
Yeah.
So think about what it's telling them: trust the plan, feeding the truth in breadcrumbs. It even said sometimes disinformation is necessary. That's what Q has told him, like literally.
It's a
So
cult.
if things are wrong, he can say, well, that was fake.
Think about it.
That was fake
It's a
disinfo to
cult.
throw off
Think
the deep
about it.
state.
Trust the plan.
It's just so
Breadcrumbs.
sad,
Here's a
though.
little bit more.
It honestly does make me sad, because there are people who I think are good folks who are looking for the truth in the age of Trump. But unfortunately, again, I don't think that if you're going down that rabbit hole, you are, and I'm not trying to, be like, oh, we're more awake than you. But I do think at some point you got to have some standards and say, like, you don't see what you're not, I don't know. We're not even looking at the same world at this point.
The official newspaper of the Communist Party of Ukraine published an article calling QAnon a military intelligence group. All kinds of things. Roseanne Barr appeared to promote the conspiracy theory, which was subsequently covered by CNN, Washington Post, and New York Times.
Oh
Roseanne.
yeah, I mean, there's definitely lots of people, and even on the Trump side, who have gotten involved and have like sort of, wink, wink, promoted QAnon, and that's what makes me think that they're very fully aware. Trump, obviously, we know he's on Twitter. He's got all these people following him. If he wasn't involved in the beginning, if his team is as smart as they are, we know they're pretty smart because they use Cambridge Analytica's data to help him become president, learning how to put people into profiles and how to respond and how to trigger them. They probably noticed, hey, if they didn't start the QAnon thing, they saw it very quickly and probably got in to some element of it. And this even goes further back. This is why it's so silly to think about this is it did start on 4chan and 8chan, and even prior to QAnon, there was somebody called FBI Anon, which was supposedly some FBI agent like that was, and it could be, who knows? But why in the hell would an FBI agent go to 4chan and 8chan to release these documents, or like just I
Yeah.
don't know. It doesn't make any sense, and I'm sure we've lost subscribers doing this talk because of that. And for those who might be believing this, again, I'm not just saying this without researching it, because trust me, I know how annoying it is when people discount things that they haven't researched. I'm fully with you on that. I stayed away from it for so long, but then after I heard it so much, I started to get into it and I dove into it, and I admitted that there's a couple times where I was like, oh my god, this is kind of weird. It looks like there might be a connection. Then I dug a little deeper. Like for example, there's a thing where Q says something at this timestamp, right? And Q has a special little code that, when they sign, that's supposed to be, that's how you know it's the same person. Of course, that's changed multiple times now, and like they've come up, oh, we had to change it to throw off the deep state. So who knows who's really signing off as Q? But
And
there
that's
was,
kind of messed up too, because you would have to be on your toes to fight the deep state, wouldn't you?
yeah, and that's what I'm
Right.
saying. So if by some chance there really was something like this, some of it can make sense. That's what I'm saying is there's some elements that make you think, man, maybe there's something to this. It's very deceptive and very tricky. And I think for folks who like puzzles and like to feel like they're a part of, like solving the mystery and the ins club, it can really get you in there. So there was a statement. Q said whatever it was, I can't remember, and then 15 minutes later, Trump tweets something nearly identical or signs it in the same way, something like that, right? Well, I went back and I did a little research, right? And at the time, Trump was in Japan. So you got to consider time zone differences, right? And I looked up how does Twitter, because the screenshot was going
Yeah.
around, how does Twitter make the
Time zones.
timestamps?
Yeah.
So and when you looked at it, it actually was a different time zone, and that whoever was posting
So it
from
was
was
that
show
time.
specific, was after Trump, not before. But when you look at the times, it says 3 p.m. or whatever it may be, and it appears that this came out before. But when you actually go back and you look at the timestamps and you look at how Twitter does the timestamps, and you look at where Trump was at when he tweeted, which was in Japan, which would be in the morning, it was so I did a little digging, and there's more than a couple of those incidents where it seems like there might be this, or there was a picture from within the Air Force One, and then later on that day Trump posted a picture and it looked like the identical background, or things like that they are claiming make it clear. But yeah, anybody has any thoughts on that, feel free to call in at 713-526-5 or 8737-526-8737.
And that's good for any Monday show. I mean, if you hear us saying this number and you're like, I want to look this up and call them because I read this somewhere else and I can't find it right now. Well, that number works for any Monday. Or if you're hearing this in an archive, our future,
Yeah,
here
in the
now.
future. We want to I'm going to read a couple comments for everybody just to know what's going
Yeah,
on
they're out there.
on YouTube. Somebody says, I agree, QAnon looks like a psyop. I think we read that one. They've been pushing for war with Iran. That's another thing, is every time there's some sort of war,
Well, aren't they together on it
they find
now?
a way to justify it. Uh, Rika says, the unsubbed announcement. Yeah, people love to tell you when they're leaving. QAnon is another psyop. A lot of mind control programs are running. Double speak. Q is supposedly some government insider who is a white hat helping Trump win against the evil Hillary Satanist cabal. That's the other thing. They blame everything on the Clintons. It's just the Clintons. There's nobody else who could be worried about. It's become a huge movement. Somebody else says, Fnord. Government is running remote neural monitoring on the American people, and Q is part of seeing what people believe and don't believe. Part of the mind control program. Interesting. It's 6D chess, not 4D.
Nice.
It is a cult, and yeah, so we got some good comments going on here on YouTube. We're thankful to all our listeners, our viewers, our watchers, everybody who is tuned in. We're about down to that last 40 minutes of the show. What do we want to do? Music? More news? What should we
I
do?
don't know. We've been talking a
Let's
lot. I've
play
been
that
going.
Spotify then.
What Spotify?
I
What
got that. Well,
Spotify?
we've debuted this new Sobolo song on Friday, but we haven't
Wanders
debuted it
away.
here on the HD2 dial. For those who tuned in on Friday, we had Sobolo in studio, and this Friday we will begin live streaming from the FM side. We're very, very
Yeah.
excited about that because you're going to be able to hear and see Johnny, our producer, as well as hear and see the articles and hear me and Micah.
It,
We're going to have fun things going on the screen. We're really going to take it to the next level.
I think yeah, we really are taking it to the next level. We're meeting, we're coming up here, doing this. We do like we always have. But we're getting some software, so I'm pretty excited about. It's going to be a little bit until that's implemented, but you'll be able to watch us on other platforms besides just the Conscious Resistance. You'll be able to share it on other platforms. So maybe you watch on the Conscious Resistance because it's got the chat and everything. But you help us reach people with this news and analysis on other platforms, because this will be going out across multiple platforms at the same time soon, and probably early February.
We might even be able to get it out in the next week or two. We'll see.
Yeah, we're really excited about that because we're doing this to reach everybody. So Below
So
wanders
below
away.
wanders away. Check this out. Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. What's up, guys? Thanks for watching. Hope you guys are enjoying the show. We appreciate all the comments about QAnon. Anything else you want to add for the background for them, Micah, about Q? What you think about that whole thing?
I don't know. I hadn't done too much into it before we brought it up. That's one of the reasons I wanted to go down the rabbit hole. I started looking on Wikipedia, and there's some interesting information there just to get started with, as far as things they claim to have done, and also some controversies with them. So I thought that was cool. I also thought it was interesting that one of the pages was blocked from Reddit, and that's not common. Unlike Facebook and unlike some of these others, they don't seem to have as heavy a hand on trying to control the content on Reddit.
Well, this is the garbage thing about it, man, is that for all the BS that, we are not on air. Bullshit. All the bullshit that they're promoting on with QAnon, it definitely, obviously we don't support censorship, so it sucks that those people who might have part of the truth, they're definitely being attacked in the media, and all that does is encourage them more. Like, look, when have you ever seen the media go after a movement like this? QAnon, they're trying to discredit us. So it just plays into their whole fears of that that Trump's the good guy and they're trying to take him down and all
I
this
think
stuff.
that's part of the problem, right? Is it's so tied to like a personality. Like nothing in any of our history was that tied to a personality. It's more about maybe the Federal Reserve being, corrupt, unconstitutional, and uncontrolled. That doesn't matter who we're talking about, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that Ron Paul's here to save us all and he's
Yeah.
going to fix everything. It was that, hey, this guy's talking about the ideas that matter.
Yep.
Trump doesn't have any ideas. He's just all that personality.
I don't think you should change your ideas to fit your person. If you do, then just to fit in, then are they really representing you, or are you just becoming like a clone?
Yeah, it's really sad because what I was gonna say is he's an autocratic personality, right? He's the strong man that some of these people are looking for, and that's the scary part, is that these QAnon types are the kind of people that they tend to be religious. They tend to be either trust the plan, whether that means Trump or Jesus or QAnon. It's kind of like sit back, things are gonna get taken care of, and it's also very much a jingoistic, I think, American mentality. That's kind of where I was going earlier with those are the types who I would think would probably be confused about what a refugee and a legitimate, what a migrant is and a refugee is, because they're just so sucked into that right narrative. And honestly,
and what are we going to do in this situation? Because people sucked into the right narrative, sucked into the left narrative. Let's just talk about the people who aren't thinking, whatever it is. What are we going to do? I mean, these people are voting.
Yeah, no, they're definitely voting, and they're not just like the kind of people who believe like, yeah, this is going on and we're gonna stay out of the system.
Get some new mud flaps from a truck.
We're gonna make sure to beat the left, because they think the deep state is only the left. Except, well, maybe the Bushes, and they count some of them, but for the most part, they think that it is just a left-wing thing. That is just the Clintons are the apex of their pyramid and things like that. So, anyways, guys, just wanted to share a little bit of background on
Trump's not the only warmonger.
Yeah. They, unfortunately, though, I mean, like I said, everything Trump does, they can make an excuse for about what's really happening. This is what's really going on.
So it's the apologetic platform.
Yeah, but even to a level we never saw with Obama.
Well, that's where he came in, right? Isn't this how Trump is supposed to be so powerful? Is like he has a staff or something that's out here doing these things, and he's tweeting every day about obnoxious stuff, and no one seems to mind, and it makes his base love him more. And meanwhile, left wing and other thinking radio shows, if they talk about him, they're spending a lot of energy doing what? Talking about him. So we try not to do that too much.
Yeah, exactly. We just wanted to talk about the QAnon thing more than actually Trump, but it is a phenomenon, unfortunately, tied to him.
I would like to maybe spend one moment talking to the audience about that idea of the side that hates him giving him so much energy. Like I don't know. Do you have any ideas, or what's that like make you think about, Derek? I know we've had conversations about this in the past, where, for lack of a better word, progressives are railing against him 24/7, and it's.
Well, I think it does give people like a fuel to their fire, but for example, going to the Iran war marches, it was all just left wing. It was all just anti-Trump. There wasn't any sort of bipartisaness. It was just pretty much vote for the Democrats. That's going to defeat Trump. We got to go to the ballot box. We got to do these kind of things. And I don't know, man. I do think that I felt like 10 years ago people realized the left right paradigm was bullshit, and now they've sucked so many people back into it. Or maybe they never did, and I just become more.
You were hanging around smart people.
All right, guys, we're going to play some Sobolo. We'll be back in just a few moments.
Best thing you know is it's something outside this paradigm. Or beyond it even. We'll have a back bus, I guess. It's either that or another song. You want
Let's do one more.
Let's go. One more of these and I'll go bass.
Got a phone call.
KPFT. Sure, MOD. Just one moment. I'll put you in the background. We're in a song for a few more moments. All right, you'll be in the background. We'll pull you up. All right. If I hang up, please call back. All right, here we go. Let's. Hope he's there. Don't hear any One of the other ideas, like QAnon isn't nonpartisan. It's Trump partisan.
Feel your love in my heart and soul. Well, I never wanna let it go. Said I'm coming, I'ma let you know that I'll be back again. I love to see you, but it's never for too long. Soon as I land, see the morning call. Gonna pack my bags, so you know I gotta run to another town. Gonna have a lot of fun. Never my intention to leave you alone. I got to live up life, I wanna live up right. Will never give up, no, don't ever give up hope.
What do they like that?
So I sing this song to you.
We haven't done as many homes and repeats and dumb things lately. That's better. Oh, I got these. Not that this matters. Oh, and I'm going to pull up that one about the government agencies looking at I got maybe some quick hits on that. And, oh, the plea bargain thing, maybe.
So I sing this song for you.
Good, made it.
All right. Welcome back to Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. My name is Derek Rose. I'm here with Micah Jackson. And you just heard Sobolo, Houston's own Sobolo, who was on Freethinker Radio on Friday, debuting a brand new song called Wanders Away. That was the first song you heard. And you just heard some of Back Again. Both of those can be found on Spotify, Bandcamp, all those good things. And we got our buddy MOD on the line with us. What's going on, brother?
Hey, man, how are you?
Well, I can give you a bunch of feedback on a lot of stuff you said, but I wanted to share information. It's okay, guys. That Whitney has a scathing paper she released before the weekend on another country's intelligence commandeering our cybersecurity.
All right, let's get into it, man. Cool, let's get into it. You got it. Just take it away, MOD.
Yes, sir. So the company is called Cyber Reason, and it's built of former Mossad and top echelon cybersecurity analysts from Unit 8200 of Israel, IDF. Meaning, after you serve 6 years in the military in Israel, if you're in cybersecurity, and you're top of the class, you know, you go into another level of surveillance intelligence, and that's called Unit 8200. And so these guys that are former graduates of that, alumni, and Mossad also, which is Israel's intelligence, built this private company called Cyber Reason. And without our government's, you know, our Congress's approval, they have done several drills, guys, Derek, Micah, here in the States. Last one in December in Boston, where they simulated a crisis on election day. And it's with the head guy of Boston, the captain, his involvement. He's on the steering committee of this company. Imagine that. And called Operation Blackout. That's the last one they did in December in Boston, where it wasn't, you know, machines being hacked or software, election software. It was instead a focus on civilian infrastructure and psychological operations against the American citizens. A focus on breakdown and control. So has that made sense so far?
Yep.
Okay, so we're using private cybersecurity companies out of Israel who take Lockheed Martin, former CIA, other people from Google, security officer from Google, and they make these private companies, cybersecurity companies that do the work for Israel and the United States. And this one called Cyber Reason, my gosh, I can keep on going, but it looks like the same kind of along the lines of using analytics, screaming at Cambridge Analytica with at least the same people, actually, meaning, you know, Cambridge was outsourced by Sheldon Adelson to create a narrative of the Russiagate thing on Facebook to steer cognitive direction, controlled reactionary of the populace, and that's what actually happened.
Yeah, I wanna say real quick, brother. You know, it's interesting you bring up the Cambridge Analytica angle because you're right. Sheldon Adelson, who of course is a huge supporter of Israel, one of the biggest investors in Cambridge Analytica. Also, we got Trump's former campaign person, Steve Bannon, who was essential to the creation of Cambridge Analytica as well. And then you've got the Mercer family, which is also big supporters of Trump and big supporters of the state of Israel, who were heavily funding the Cambridge Analytica program to try to help Trump get elected as well. So there's a lot of Israeli lobby, Israeli supporters kind of surrounding all that tech.
And add to your point there on this M, whatever thing. Before M, there was called the alt-right, Derek, and this guy named Spencer, Richard, I think, was brought up to the ranks. And you look at the photo of him, Steve Bannon, and this guy Breitbart, whoever the guy that died a couple years ago. And they're sitting in this office in Tel Aviv, and guess what? That's the headquarters for Breitbart. And at the table, Bibi's turning around smiling. And you see all these actors, you know, at the table at the Tel Aviv office for Breitbart. So think about that. If your users, you listeners can take that in and understand that a controlled opposition, like the new alt-right, which is, you know who I'm talking about, Spencer?
Yeah, Richard Spencer.
Yeah, and his bio is so funny, man. It'll blow you out of the water where he comes from. In other words, he doesn't have a dirty hand on anything. He's beyond privileged. But instead of, you know, going down that, basically, we call them lackeys from Langley. Whenever you have intelligence folks working out of Washington, Langley is like an area for intelligence, and so we have people in our State Department that are going into these alt-right sites, stirring up ruckus, you know, racial tension baiting. And they actually, article I just read, one of these guys works for the State Department. So we talk about introducing, creating strife and havoc. This is like, to your point, I don't know what I want to go back to Iran on that, but maybe I can stop there and let y'all respond.
Well, let's we do have some news to cover, brother. I wanna, and you always provide good information. I know our YouTube listeners and our radio listeners appreciate it. But I actually want to ask you a question, and then we'll kind of wrap things up as we move forward. I want to hear your thoughts on the whole QAnon thing.
Yeah, controlled opposition, old story, old narrative. These companies like RAND, RAND Corporation, out of Santa Barbara, California. These are the folks who have managed Vietnam, and right now Ukraine with Victoria Nuland. These intelligence agencies create controlled oppositions, and M Group is one of them. The Pizzagate, all these things. If you control the narrative, you can control the opposition too. What that means, Derek, is, and this goes back to when the CIA came to fruition, and Rand Group has this thing called stage, like an act stage you perform on.
Yeah.
Craft, CARCRAFT, and then there's also state, like like a state, nation state, statecraft, and this company called RAND Corporation creates this reality, or this narrative of using cinema and media to create these isms, and they're very good at it now because it's hard to tell the difference from what is concocted or what is a sincere progressive effort. Meaning, M is most likely a concoction of a controlled, not organic NGO. It's like Richard Spencer. His parents are screaming liberals. He's not really a racist. His parents are liberals, but he was recruited, and this is just an old practice of and let me just give you this to conclude, if it's okay. Statecraft would be like actors, lifetime actors. This is per Gene Sharp. I don't know if you know who Gene Sharp is. He created this thing called soft power revolutions. And so a statecraft would be like Clinton as Secretary of State going in and blowing up Libya with no other countries backing and just, war crimes, right? Stagecraft would be like your cinema, your Brangelina, and all of them with the media. The media, the news. And you'll see these actors going in and out of movies. I can give you 1,000 or 100 examples, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's ultimately what Leo Strauss called, Derek, when he took over for the U.S. when France left the Golden Triangle, which is called French Indochina. In 1956, this model started up, going really quick, guys. And Edward Bernays was already doing his propaganda. You're right. Freedom cigarettes, the women were smoking, whatever. But going into the mid 50s,
we're gonna have to leave it there, brother. We're gonna have to leave it there for today.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother.
Thank you, MOD. Definitely. Hope y'all are enjoying the input.
Yeah, the chat loved him. The chat loved him.
He definitely brings well articulated discussion and sometimes stuff we don't know about. I checked into a little bit of Cyber Reason just with him on the phone.
I was showing some of that on the screen.
Yeah, I saw the Mint Press article as well. And they don't make any qualms about it, that they have a lot of Israeli Defense Force, former Defense Force employees. But when you start digging into them a little bit more, I think he did a really good job, though, in making the distinction between stagecraft and statecraft like that, and showing the two working together.
Yeah, and I think most people, talking about propaganda, that's a big part of it, right, is the stage aspect of it. And, to the point of what he was kind of alluding to with Richard Spencer and the whole alt-right, Antifa kind of division, racial division, obviously we have found it. And I will say there's some good aspects of the progressive movement. That's, you can hate me if you want. I think there are some good aspects that have been done and some things that have been exposed. For example, the quote-unquote Me Too movement. There are some realistic elements to that, I think, that have pushed certain powerful people like the Weinsteins and the Epsteins.
That's more like social, right? That's a social.
But I mean, like, it tends to be seen as like a left-wing kind of, progressive thing. But I think there's also so much co-optedness happening that, you know, it starts to, you get ideas like believe all women, believe all victims. You know, things get twisted, right? And so what he was talking about with using a character like Richard Spencer, who plays this very like racist type person who has been, you know, there were leaked recordings recently of Richard Spencer using the N-word and saying some other things. So it may be true, but I know for a fact, and we tried to get an interview with this author, but unfortunately he's retired. The book, I'll see if I can pull it up by the end of the show, but his book, Stephen Rabe, is Rabe, if you look him up. He wrote this book about British Guyana, and I've used this as an example a few times because I think this is the model for what's happening over here. The British intelligence services and the CIA used the AFL-CIO, which is one of the biggest unions in the world, and
The first one to negotiate with the government.
definitely in the U.S. I didn't know that, but so that's another interesting tidbit. And they used the AFL-CIO down in what was known as, quote, British Guyana before they, you know, rebelled and kicked them out of there. To go down there and use the unions to create racial protests and racial division, to stoke the divisions that they knew existed between this ethnic group and that ethnic group in order to create chaos and division and to take advantage of that. So that's all documented. That's fact.
Stress.
And that's just one nation. That's just down there in British Guyana. We know the U.S. has used similar platforms and similar kind of templates in Europe and across the U.S. So I don't think we're out of the woods as far as U.S. and maybe Israeli and other intelligence agencies using race and other divisions. For example, the focus on identity politics. Again, I do think that there's some elements, there's lessons to be learned, there's some interesting philosophical discussions, but there's also some element that tends to sort of turn people on each other, right? Where people say like the left is eating themselves because, oh, well, you're not progressive enough, or this isn't diverse enough, or this is, you know, there's all these sort of convoluted things that just get into people attacking each other.
Into the groupthink.
And not exactly, you're not fitting the sort of groupthink model, and we miss the people above us who are fleecing and, you know, going after all of us. But
give us back our turns.
We're down to the last 15 minutes. Appreciate that call, MOD. I think we're just going to breeze through some news. Both of us have some things to cover. Micah, I'll leave it to you.
All right, let me get into it. I'm just going to go through some headlines real quick. Let's see, ones that I didn't think we need to go all the way into. There's a Christian college that's being sued for expelling a man in a same-sex marriage. I don't know what y'all think about that, but Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California will now have to face two plaintiffs who alleged discrimination when the school expelled them both for being in a same-sex marriage. I think that really the problem here, just to boil it down, is that Fuller accepts federal funding and doesn't have a religious exemption under Title 9. So, you know, they're getting government funds to be a school, and that's kind of different than being their own private sort of thing.
And this is a Christian college, you said?
Yes. It turns out that the couple is seeking $2 million in damages. And
just one note I want to add on that. We don't have time to get into this, maybe next week or something, but I have noticed as far as the issues like this in religion, Mike, I don't know if you saw that the United Methodist Church is undergoing like a historic division where the global leaders of the United Methodist Church are coming together to agree to allow the U.S. branch to divide, because some people are so for, you know, unfortunately it seems to be dividing even among the church, again, along partisan lines. The people who are very conservative are like, no, we shouldn't allow same-sex marriages and gay pastors or whatnot. And the other side says yes, to the point that they realize they can't reconcile and they're going to split into, you know, for whatever it's worth, it's churches. But I think that's interesting that it's kind of it's showing that these conversations that we're talking about, the identity politics, the different issues that are being brought up, are even splitting people along religious lines.
You know, this is how it goes, right? In culture, right? This is what happens. You know, you always have forces that try to resist any sort of change, and then you have forces that just want to run off haphazard. And so, like, back and forth. Sometimes the change is good, sometimes it's not. And, you know, it's up to individuals to make these decisions. And, you know, I can't really speak too much on these. I do think that if this school here was private and it's against what they're teaching, then that's one thing. But if they're taking government funding and everything else, then there's no citizen that's better than another citizen in this country, you know, from what we understand as far as, you know, entitlement to the services and like the roads and all the stuff we say we get from the government. So that seems to be kind of the biggest problem to me. I think it's a whole different thing. If you're trying to make an independent Christian baker make a devil cake, that's a different thing.
I remember all that.
I'm not saying that the cake they were asked to make was a devil cake in the history. I'm just trying to make one where there's an obvious, you know, an individual who's being turned into a slave to other people. You know, if you're a baker and it's against your belief to do this, You're not getting government funding. I don't know, but we can take this all the way back to any sort of segregation. And so, will everybody just be forced to serve one another? Is where that question comes from ultimately. But let's just keep moving because I didn't want to go too far into that one, but I did want to point out that suit was going on, and one of the major concerns I had about it. I got two others, and then I'll just hand it over to you. Detroit, Detroit property owners were overtaxed by over 600 million. That's more than half a trillion. After failing to devalue properties after the recession. And like we talk about many things here in Houston, you might want to wonder where else did this happen, this Detroit thing. Now, we know Detroit was really hit during the Great Recession, but that doesn't mean what's happening there didn't happen in other cities. Just like we know Houston's full of all kinds of crooked cops. But that doesn't mean what happened with Gerald Goins doesn't happen up in, I don't know, LA. So, with a different name. So yeah, it turns out that Detroit raked in another, because the government needed the money so much, another $500 billion or more from homeowners. Those are the people that got most of the money, right? Go ahead and give it to the government. Detroit was one of the hardest hit cities during the '09 recession. City shed more than 250,000 people. That's a lot of people, right? And check this out. The median sales price for a home dipped from approximately $75,000 in 2007 to less than 10,000, from 75 to less than 10. And the median, what's that say? That's the one in the middle of all the numbers, right? So yeah, $10,000 was the median home price. Yet their city government didn't do anything to adjust the property tax things, and they just kept taking the money. So yeah, don't count on the government like amending itself anytime soon, whether you're talking about your city government, your little neighborhood government, the federal government, your state government, or the UN. In total, 92% of the homes in Detroit were overvalued the entire time between 2010 and 2016. 92% of them, by an average of at least $3,800. Of the 173,000 homes included in the report, 96,000 homes were taxed over double the value they should have been assessed. Well, I think we should get double back than what we should, from the government. Maybe they should make some really good streets in Detroit. Let's see what else we got. I got another one here. This one was kind of interesting. We pay all these government employees, right? Check it out. Epidemic of government employees watching porn on taxpayer time. Where's this from? Judicial Watch. An epidemic of federal employees watching porn on taxpayer time has reached a new low at one agency where a veteran staffer, quote, viewed child pornography on a government computer on multiple occasions. The unidentified employee worked at the Bureau of Land Management. You know those guys, right? Which operates under the Department of the Interior, and admitted to investigators from the agency's Inspector General office that he viewed adult pornography on multiple occasions, though he knew DOI policy prohibits it. So, these guys here, maybe this is something we should think about. Checks and balances. If you work for the government and you can't stop watching porn on a government computer, maybe you don't follow the rules so well. Maybe you shouldn't work at government. I think there's some checks and balances like that. We've talked about them a number of times in this show. Like this whole thing with Goins back in the beginning, reporting something 100% of the time, but never delivering on it. That should be an alarm in any police force, I think. But yeah, anyway, so government employees surfing porn, getting paid, child porn at that, multiple times, blah, blah, blah. I think that's all I got.
Yeah, it's a little disturbing, and I think people in the chat are disturbed by it as well, and people listening are probably disturbed, not only because, like, you did a good job of pointing out that there's the taxpayer waste. I was looking at the Detroit one again, and just to reiterate, it says more than 90% overtaxed by
92%.
$3,700 by an average per person for at least 6 years. I'm sure these things happen more often than people realize. And then you got government employees probably whacking off on taxpayer dollars, and at least one example of child pornography. I mean, yeah. I'm going to move into a couple of stories as we continue. Again, for those who want to watch and see the articles, you can go to youtube.com/consciousresistance. We are live until the end of the show, and even for a little bit afterwards, covering these stories. This one is coming from freethoughtproject.com, and it is titled, Taxpayers to be Held Liable After Cops Open Fire on Truck Full of Toddlers, Shooting 3 of Them. Just another example of this
Just
sort
a
of...
truck full of toddlers.
Well, there was, I think, family in there as well. It's not just a bunch of kids
It
driving
sounds like
around.
something from one of these cartoons. I'm sorry.
So it says, as Free Thought Project reported last year, a rather disturbing scene unfolding in Oklahoma City as police officers attempting to kill a robbery suspect opened fire on 4 small children, shooting 3 of them. For months, the family and
That's
residents
75%
demanded
accuracy.
For months, the family and residents demanded answers, and the police remained silent. Now, after the police have refused to hold anyone accountable, the mother of the 3 children who were shot is seeking legal action in the form of a lawsuit. Olivia Hill has filed a tort claim
Guess who'll
against
be
the
paying
city
that, too?
of Hugo. Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing, is it always does come out of the taxpayers who are fleeced and extorted in order to allow this whole thing to go
For
on.
every crime of government, the government never pays. You pay.
The claim was filed last month against the city, in which Hill is seeking unspecified monetary damages for pain and suffering, mental anguish, and emotional distress, current and future medical bills, and counseling, and damages to her truck, of course. And
Bullets, that's
the
damage.
according to the claim, it says the shooting was objectively unreasonable, unnecessary, and reckless or negligent. And the city of Hugo and other members of the Hugo Police Department were negligent in hiring, training, and supervising the officers who perpetuated it. So we'll keep an eye on these sort of things. Medical records do say a bullet pierced the left frontal lobe of a 4-year-old Asia
hate hearing this
Jacobs'
stuff.
brain. A 5-year-old brother suffered a skull fracture, and 1-year-old sister was left with deep facial cuts. Asia's 2-year-old brother was lucky enough not to be hit. The children's mother, Olivia Hill, says emotionally they're not okay. Physically, they're here. However, Hill notes that these injuries are substantial. So again, that's coming from the Free Thought Project. One other one related
That's
to
probably traumatizing.
definitely traumatized. 2 other ones from the Free Thought Project that kind of cover. The episode today is called Propaganda is All Around You, and definitely in relation to Iran and other events that we've been covering throughout the show. There's a lots of propaganda. These are examples, I think, of people pushing back against that propaganda. This one, it says Libertarian Congresswoman blasts Donald Trump for selling troops to country who helped carry out 9/11.
Way to
Which
call it.
country would this be? Saudi Arabia, of course. So it says recently on Laura Ingraham, they had a guest who, let me try to find his name here. Excuse me, Justin Amash. Well, actually, I think Justin Amash, although he probably is libertarian in philosophy, he left the Republican Party recently and became an independent because he was like, I can't deal with these people anymore. So Justin Amash tweeted out a clip from Trump discussing Iraq with Laura Ingraham on Fox, where Trump says, "Listen, you're a very rich country," Trump recounted on Fox News. "You want more troops? I'm going to send them to you, but you've got to pay us. They're paying us. They've already deposited $1 billion in the bank. I'm going to send them to you, but you've got to pay us." Directly refers to the act of selling troops. Then he says he's already gotten paid for it. So, I mean, this is literally just some rich people buying, selling people's lives. Trump says, "We're going to help them, but these rich countries have to pay for it. South Korea gave us $5 million. I said, you got to help us along. We have 32,000 soldiers in South Korea protecting you from North Korea. You've got to pay." Now, obviously, it doesn't seem, I guess, different from standard operating procedure, I doubt, but it's the way and the way it's being communicated, that this is literally, as Henry Kissinger's famous quote, that soldiers are just stupid, dumb, dumb pawns on a chessboard or something along those lines. But that's the general feeling, is that these people think that you're just cannon fodder, you're just pawns. And so Justin Amash tweeted out, he sells troops. And
Just don't think that they're doing anything to protect your freedoms with this going on, because you don't have to sell troops to protect the freedoms.
Yep. Amash says he sells troops. He goes on to say, quote, "He's not bringing home the troops. He's just moving them to other parts of the Middle East. He's moving troops into Saudi Arabia and using our forces almost as paid mercenaries. As long as Saudi Arabia pays us money, it's good to go," he added sarcastically. So, of course, as I said, Amash recently left the Republican Party because he's not towing the Trump line. And he doesn't mean he's a never Trumper Democrat or left winger that some of you might jump to immediately. He's just not falling for the party line, and I give him that, at least on that issue.
I saw Rand Paul speak out against the invasion a week ago or whatever. The invasion, the killing of General Solomon.
Him, Amash, and on the Democrats, Tulsi Gabbard have been consistent on that. And this one is just an opinion piece. I won't get too much into it, but I will post it on our Facebook and in the YouTube chat. It's called "Opposing Iran War Doesn't Make You Conservative or Liberal. It Makes You Smart." And you can obviously kind of sense the theme of this one here. But it's worth a read. It's just a few minutes read, and it kind of goes into some different things. For one part that I think is interesting right here, it says, there's a tweet showing just 4 years ago, CNN correctly praised Soleimani for being the driving force defeating ISIS. Today, neocons call him a terrorist with zero evidence to sell. Another disastrous war, and expect you to believe them without question. And again, that's not saying that this guy is some perfect angel or anything like that. People try to just be one dichotomy or the other,
it's back and forth.
It's hard
to be a general and just be a perfect angel.
So, but that doesn't mean what the U.S. is now claiming. This guy definitely did play a role in fighting back ISIS, as did Russia. We're down to the last couple minutes. Yeah, CIA funding rebels. This one coming from Mind Unleashed. I actually wrote this, put this together on Friday. Just filed this in your people trusting authorities, putting them around children, and children ending up scarred and molested. And just unfortunately, according to a new lawsuit filed last Monday against the Boy Scouts of America from 8 different John Doe men who were children and went through the program, suffered sexual abuse at the hands of Scoutmasters. The lawsuit claims that the Boy Scout organization, quote, has become a magnet for tens and thousands of
Of course it
pedophiles.
has.
And I didn't know this, man. I don't know if you knew this, but even though the BSA, the Boy Scouts of America, have been reporting to Congress every year as they're required to, and they always promote themselves as bastions of America, they actually maintained a secret list of Scoutmasters who were accused or caught abusing children and never released it publicly, didn't disclose that to Congress, and maybe quietly disclosed it to some of the families, but only on like a case-by-case basis, never sort of a public reckoning. And now that appears to be happening, as this is one of hundreds of lawsuits that are starting to be filed because several states, including New York and California, have changed their statute of limitations, which is now opening up. This is why we saw the new Epstein lawsuits, for example. This is now also
The
allowing.
video of his first.
This is allowing
attempt is going.
victims of the Catholic Church, victims of priests, victims of the Boy Scouts of America who
Of the
were,
ISDs.
and the schools, and well, just in general, people who the statute of limitations was
Yeah.
preventing them. So we will keep an eye on that. But unfortunately, another example of putting faith in these people and this institution apparently has become a magnet for pedophiles. It's pretty crazy. But that's just some of the headlines that we've seen this past week. Of course, we're here every Monday from 4 to 6 p.m.
New York Fed added another 83 billion on Thursday to liquidity market. But yeah,
Every 4 to 6 p.m. Fridays, we're here on the FM side from 3 to 4 p.m. If you want to stay for a little extra, tune into youtube.com/conscious resistance, because when we go off live on KPFT on the HD2 dial, which we're so thankful for, we're going to do a little bit of afterthought, I guess we'll call it. We did this last time, and just sort of reflect on some of the stories, maybe even cover a few more stories that we didn't have time to get into today. Got any music to close out with, or what do you think?
Yeah.
What do you?
we're in
play
the
a
last
song.
minute.
We're in the last minute. We're going to end with a little bit of music for those who are listening. We appreciate everybody tuning in.
We're out.
Again, we couldn't do this without you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. Peace. It's the thing. All right. What up, guys? Woo. We are officially off air.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
off air thing has.
FCC non-compliant.
We can now be non-compliant. We don't have to
We don't
abide
even
by the
care, but
FCC.
It feels good.
Because occasionally, like on Friday's show, for those who tuned in, we
We have
did have some guests who don't mind their P's and Q's with the FCC rules, and we have a cool little button over here, dump button, that you press it, and what does it do? Like,
Well, it's different in there. If you press it once, it erases 3 seconds, and then if you press it twice, 5 and 8. So when somebody's saying S-bombs, F-bombs, we have to go click, click, click. I hope you went far enough back. But yeah, the FCC, it thinks there's some words that are just too bad for y'all to hear. You won't hear them on your songs, and you won't hear them on YouTube, right? Wrong. But
that whole 7 words you can't say bit by George Carlin is actually true, for those who maybe didn't know whether that was factual or not.
And also, the other part of it is, if these words are so bad, why do all those DJs have to read them? Like, we're being, like, really twisted by these words. Tortured. My head hurts. My eyes hurt reading the words.
FYI,
They're so bad you can't hear them.
I'm posting all the links that we just
The
covered.
words.
Micah's stories on the porn and the Detroit taxpayer. I'm posting the shooting with the toddlers. That was pretty crazy. And I'm posting the opposing the war doesn't make you a conservative or liberal, and the Boy Scout story. So for those who want to keep up with that, you can check those in the comments.
And we always have more stories that we can even get into. I had one that I've been carrying around for 2 weeks now about plea bargains. I mean, we talked about when you were in court, I spent a lot of time talking about plea bargains. But that was a year ago or something. And, it does turn out that they, how do I put it? They're a great deal, right? That's why they like them. But it turns out that, like, I think 90% or more of the 97% of criminal convictions come from plea bargains. So it's not that they're getting, like, irrefutable evidence, as much as they're just putting
They're
a
scaring
sweat on
people.
someone, like Otis Mathis' brother, who went ahead and took the plea and is out while Otis is still fighting. Luckily, when Derek went for some silly little thing, they offered him a plea bargain. He didn't take it. I mean, if they have anything, make them. I don't think we should ever take a plea. If you're innocent and you take a plea, you're letting us all down. You're not being brave. You're letting us.
And there might be some older listeners and not older, but like people who've been around for a minute, like
120.
libertarians and stuff, who remember an organization called Never Take a Plea. This guy named Clyde Lewis back in the day, I don't know if he's still around doing stuff, but it was basically that, trying to educate people on their rights when it comes to being charged with a crime, and to the statistics behind how much cops push plea deals and are able to get people into deals that they might be, cases they might have been able to beat. But most of us either got to get back to work, got to get back to school, got to make money, can't afford lawyers and all this stuff, so they know they can kind of tell you a deal. And in the case that Micah was talking about, they went from offering me 6 months in the county all the way
Think
down.
about that, half a year. I mean, really, this isn't light. It was a silly little thing.
They claimed I scratched a cop's thumb, and so it went from like we show up in court, first thing they're offering 6 months in the county, and because I
Half a year.
have a record from 15 years ago, they were like, we're gonna go for the maximum. So they went 6 months, and we played ball for months. I think it was a 10-month deal until they all the way got to the point where literally they're like, okay, no time, just plead guilty, because they went from 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, 21 days, 7, all the way, and I knew they didn't have anything.
And all they have to do is be strong enough to to induce a deal, not strong enough to withstand cross-examination or anything. I mean, I think that's kind of important.
Yeah, so you got to be careful out there. Look at, maybe it still exists. Never Take a Plea. Check that out and see if there's. I'm sure, hopefully there's still some resources. Those are important things.
Just recently in Massachusetts, 47,000 convictions were thrown out from faulty drug tests. That if people had bothered to push, I've talked about one where an officer, a former cop, and his wife or girlfriend or whatever she was, were traveling around in an RV or something, and they got pulled over, and the guy was so, system mentality that when they got arrested for cocaine in the baking soda, he wondered how cocaine got in the baking soda. So these tests can be faulty. There's all kinds of things that if you're innocent, don't just think they've got everything, because, I mean, it's obviously not always the case.
Yeah, I'm going to read a couple comments from YouTube. Thank you guys again. We really do appreciate Micah goes on about the comments. We appreciate the interaction. Even if we only have like 20 to 30 live viewers, sometimes I've had as many as 100 to 200 whenever I'm talking about pedophilia, typically, honestly. If I'm talking about Jeffrey Epstein, you guys rush to the screen.
Not them, the others.
But you guys seem to be there no matter what. But so the show, as you can see, we cover local music. We interview guests often, and we go over the news. We take phone calls. We're really excited to start streaming this Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. That's Central Time. So you can either join my text list. Oh, actually, I forgot to say this. We have a Freethinker Radio text list. We have a text list specifically. Maybe it's too much to join, but for those who, if you already follow my work and you're part of my text list, I send out text every time I go live with Freethinker Radio. But we are developing our own specific Freethinker Radio text list so that maybe we can...
Maybe you don't want all of Derek's stuff.
Well, and also maybe that can be another way to help give out tickets and do things. Yeah. If you're a part of the text list, you might get maybe a bonus.
Maybe we randomly pick someone each month from the text list.
Or at the very least, you find out ahead of time, hey guys, tune in Friday because we're giving away tickets to Envision Fest, or we're giving away these various businesses. And we are going to try, while we're focused on Houston, of course, we are trying to reach out to more businesses that even if you're listening from Vermont or from California, that it might be something you can use and, enjoy wherever else.
Because we love giving stuff away. It's not just Freethinker Radio and freedom loving. It's free stuff loving.
Free stuff radio. All right, guys, I'm going to post the link to the Freethinker Radio text list for those who might want to join that. Again, you just sign up on remind.com. It'll walk you through the whole thing. And all we're going to do is send you a text that, once or twice a week, hey, we're going live with the link, and just a little reminder. And then again, maybe some information on what guests we have coming up, or some tickets we're giving away to a concert you can enjoy, or something, different things we have to give away. But let me see if there's any important comments. They're all important, but Rika, you said what a bunch of cretins. I'm thinking you're talking about the
people from Crete,
the taxpayer pornography, the child porn.
Hey, now that's not fair to people from Crete, which is, yeah.
Someone said, Rogue Cow says, as someone who was against the Iraq wars, even when most folks wanted them, I gotta say I see the same garbage in Trump I saw in Bush, the same greed, and the same lack of compassion for our world. Trump is covered with red flags, and whoever goes out with this guy is mentally challenged or emotionally naive or possessed by black goo from the hell realm.
Wow. It's fun.
Doria Rosa says that the Methodist Church has been having their heated civil debate over same-sex for a little over a year now. It's completely divided. Love Fest is happening in a church which is taking the liberal side of things. So Love Fest is the festival that Micah mentioned earlier in the show, happening here in Houston later this month at a Methodist church, which is apparently taking the liberal same-sex marriage acceptance side. So it's right here in our own city, And I think that's where we're going to probably leave it, guys.
For sure. Really appreciate everything. Love the comments. Want to get into
What's up, Christina?
more. I think we've been doing better since we've been on. It's silly as it is on live streaming. I think maybe
Being on camera forces us to act right.
I don't know. It makes us self-conscious, but I think it's really good to have the feedback. I feel like it's obvious that we get way more feedback live streaming than we do from the people calling in, um, even on the FM side. So, yeah, it's hot. Thanks for being part of that. Thanks for the thumbs up, likes, comments, shares. It means the world to us. And the further we can reach with these videos, the more stuff we can get, the more news we're driven to cover, and the more music we're forced to discover and enjoy. So thanks for helping our lives be like that. Without you, we wouldn't even be here.
The show wouldn't be as exciting. Also, guys, if you ever have music suggestions, it doesn't have to be Houston music. Send it
No,
over.
it doesn't.
Micah is involved with a lot of different music. We involved in putting on music festivals in Houston and other things. We like to
But
discover
we've got
all kinds of
CDs sent
music.
here from Australia multiple
Yeah.
times that we've played.
We have a box here. If you were to send a CD because you wanted to release your new
We should
latest
say
album,
the address. It's
uh,
419
Lovett
Street, Houston,
419
Texas.
Lovett Street. If you just go to kpft.org, you can find that. Just in case, by chance, anybody does want to send a physical copy of
Or a
their
pizza.
album or send us a pizza through mail, we'll definitely accept that. I prefer vegan if possible, and we can play your music
I
on
can
air.
do vegetarian.
So vegetarian, vegan pizza, CDs,
It's
whatever you want.
419 Lovett Street, Houston, Texas, 77006. Or maybe you send us an article. I mean,
Send us
maybe
some
you run into
information.
something, a magazine that's got something in it that you really think is important. Of course, we're going to read it, have our reflection on it, but, there's going to be people in the chat with comments. And, it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of like this group interchange now. And that's what we really were after the entire time.
Absolutely. And shout out to everybody in the chat. What's up, Callie? What's up, Rika? Christina? Of course, North Kuro is listening from New Zealand. That's awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. We're going to close out for the day. Again, this archive will be live on the YouTube channel as soon as we're done. So if you missed it, you can go back and watch the whole thing. And we covered lots of important stories. We hope that you will share the links. They're in the chat. And until next time, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Peace.
See you Friday.